The Verdict with World Pool.
Hi everybody, welcome to this week's edition of The Verdict, in which we are going to major on Dubai Future Champions weekend at Newmarket, racing there on Friday and Saturday. We're taking 5 races from there, but I want to go to York firstly. They staged 2 excellent days of racing on Friday and Saturday. The Coral Sprint Trophy meeting was on the Saturday. We'll have a look at Friday's winners, and I'm going to focus on the first race, won by Ice Max at 1:30. Just shy of a mile the trip here, 7 furlongs, 192 yards. His win time was 1:36.97, his 1.47 above the Racing Post standard. All of the times were above, but they weren't necessarily slow times. Let's have a look at the Race IQ Time Index, which gives us a good handle on how the ground rode. It was officially described as being good, and I think that's about spot on with a meeting average of 4.7. And the best time came from Ice Max in that opening contest. I think, if anything, it was a tad easier than good, but not much really. I think good is a good description from the executive. Right, let's look at Ice Max then. Stall 17 he came from, beat Thunder Roar from 12, and Northern Express came from stall 11. So high draws have it, but they have a disadvantage as far as the draw is concerned. Look at the draw bias, bottom left-hand side of your screen. Race IQ draw bias says that minus 0.91 lengths for a horse coming out of stall 17 field of this size on this ground over this trip. So he had just under a length's disadvantage to overcome, coming back into a handicap. He'd been running in group races most of the season, and he's back into a handicap off a mark of 106. And he's able to outstay his rivals in a race that was quite strongly run in the early part of it. 50 Nifty taking them along. Quite fast, really, the early sectionals. He was sat mid-division off that fast pace. He had to run quite hard in furlong 3, looking 11.89 to hold his position. So there was no messing around here. Nifty 50 going 11.94, 11.82, 11.43, 11.4, and really kicking on as soon as he turned into the home straight. You can see how well strung out they all are here. And thus it turned into a race that was strongly run in its mid part and then a slow finish, as evidenced by the finishing speed percentage of 99.64. Ice Max, 5th furlong, making ground, 11.45. He ran par through that, making up ground towards the stand side, and then his last 3 furlongs are all slower than par, because this has turned into an attritional test of stamina at the trip. But he keeps going better than his rivals. 24.72 his final couple of furlongs, the runner-up 24.78, the third 25.73. So he's just kept going better than Thunder Roar in second, who's run an absolute blinder. But this was all about a race that was steadily run for the first couple of furlongs. They then went hard thereafter, causing a slow finish. Nothing's quickening up, but Ice Max is staying on really strongly from mid-division, quite sensibly, given a patient ride off that early speed. One horse who raced close to the speed was Northern Express. He was in second place throughout, and he deserves a lot of credit for keeping going. He's clearly in top form, this horse, and he finished back in 3rd spot. So he might be a horse who'll win a handicap before the end of the season. That was a big effort from him. This tells us all we need to know about how the race was run, colour-coded as far as the sections are concerned when compared with the Race IQ Par. And you can see that the horses, the first 4 indeed, ran quite hard early on, picking it up through the 3rd furlong and the 4th furlong, 5th furlong they picked up as well. And then that led to a slow finish through the final 3 furlongs. When you've got a slow finish, one horse is going to be faster than the others, and that was Ice Max. And he's done really well off a mark of 106 here, back into handicap. I suspect he'll be back up in grade now after this. That won't be a problem, and he's won a Celebration Mile in the past, so he's capable at group level. What makes him a good horse at that level is plenty of cut in the ground. Good ground was fine for him here, but when he gets a bit more cut this autumn, there might be more to come from him in better company. OK, let's move from York and that really good time performance from Ice Max to day one of Dubai Future Champions weekend at Newmarket. It was on Friday afternoon, and we got a very interesting performance to start off with, that of Beauvatier in the 225, which was the Challenge Stakes of Group 2. We'll also be having a look at Precise in the 257 under Christophe Soumillon for Aidan O'Brien. Pretty impressive she was, and we'll break down the data. All of the times were pretty quick overall. You can see quite a fair few of them dipped under the Racing Post Standard, including Beauvatier and Precise. Calendar Girl did as well, so did Carmology. So from that you could infer that we were dealing with fast ground, and the Race IQ Time Index definitely backs that up. We've got an average of 7.9. Ground described as good to firm in places. Good to firm, really, according to the time index here. I do think it was quick ground, and I think it would have been better described as good to firm. So we look at race 3 and race 4, and we start with Beauvatier in what was the Thoroughbred Industry Employee Awards Challenge Stakes. It's a Group 2 contest in which Beauvatier jumped from stall 5, beats Poet Master from 1, and Cosmic Year from stall number 3. I have a plea about Cosmic Year. I'll make that plea towards the end of this piece about this race, which was fiercely run. Audience has basically overdone it out in front. Look where the win is. Beauvatier last at this stage, 6-7 more lengths off the pace. And you can see had to run 10.65 through the second furlong just to vaguely stay in touch. That tells you how fast they were going up front. 3 of the first 4 furlongs were rated faster than the Race IQ par. He was doing too much audience. He went 14.28, 10.85, 10.79, 10.86, and it led to a slow finish, basically with Beauvatier not quickening, just keeping going better than weakening and tiring rivals all around him. They all ran slow a final couple of furlongs. Beauvatier coming home in 11.42 and 12.71. They are slow against the Race IQ par, and all he had to do was keep going. Audience is done with at this stage. Cosmic Year looks done with, having raced close up. Poet Master looks done with. He raced close up too. And the winner can win by coming home with a finishing speed percentage of 97.71. He didn't have to quicken, he didn't have to pick up. He could run under par for the final 2 furlongs and still win the Challenge Stakes. It was a well-judged ride on Beauvatier from Alexis Pouchin. French horse won this last year, so 2 years on the bounce they've taken the Challenge Stakes, and this was just a perfect setup. Horses going way too fast in front of him and then just picking them up in the closing stages. If you look through his career, he looks like he's better on soft ground. This tells us that he's probably pace dependent. He wants them to go really hard and stop. That's what he really wants. Soft ground is perhaps good for him when it slows the front runners or leaders down. But really, he looks like he's, well, very effective on decent ground as well, judged on this performance. The data tells you everything you need to know about the pace of the race. Look how fast they've gone early on. Forget the first furlong, go to the second, third and fourth furlongs. And they've gone really quick. And even Beauvatier, who is not detached, but he's off the back of the field, had to go a 10.64, very fast furlong to just stay in touch. And then they're all slowing down. Look at the winner, 11.24, 11.42, and a really tepid 12.71 final furlong. They're absolutely shattered in the closing stages, having gone way too hard early. I said I'd make a bit of a plea about this race as we see Beauvatier come back in. It's about Cosmic Year. He's a really fast horse. He could lay up here, 10.71, 10.85, 10.85. He's shown loads of speed in his career, particularly when he won at Kempton. He seemed to relish that synthetic surface. I think he's a sprinter. He's never raced over 6 furlongs, and it will be well worth connections, I think, dropping him back in trip to 6 furlongs. I think that would really suit Cosmic Year. Of course, they've also got a gelding operation up their sleeves if they want to go down that route as well. So there's a future for Cosmic Year, perhaps not one that he's necessarily planned himself, but there is a future for him, possibly sprinting next season. Beauvatier picks up the pieces in a very strange Challenge Stakes. OK, let's have a look at the Bet365 Fillies Mile, Group 1, of course. And we'll pick them up from the stalls. There's Precise, the winner from stall 2, Christophe Soumillon. Venetian Lace runs a blinder in second spot, highlighted to the 4, and Evolutionist was third from stall number 7. Look at the move Soumillon makes across from where he was in stall 2 to get across with his pacemakers over on the far side, and now he is sat nicely in behind, composing. He's just about in last spot. He races in 10th place in the early part of the race. What are we going to say about the run of the Fillies Mile? It was an even gallop. It was a test of stamina, and Precise has come home stronger than everything else in the race. Venetian Lace doing really well the way the race was run, because her first 2 furlongs were faster than par at 14.17 and 11.12, but she sticks to her task really well indeed. But it is Precise who runs even furlongs, bar her last furlong under Christophe Soumillon, to outstay her rivals. This wasn't necessarily about quickening, but outstaying them. Look at her 5th furlong, 11.19, as she begins to make her move from the back of the field stand side. Then 11.27. These are not wickedly quick fractions. These are par sectionals she's running. She's just running evenly. Venetian Lace runs around in front of her. Briefly, she's stuck in behind her, pulled out, and now she just keeps on going. She's not really quickening according to the data, but she's keeping on a lot stronger than all of her rivals. Her final 2 furlongs, 24.47 for a finishing speed percentage, which is 96.45. It's under par, under what you would perhaps expect over a mile here on the Roley Mile on this ground. So she's not really quickened up, but in a strongly run race where they went evenly throughout, she has kept going best. And that is shown by the final furlong data. 13.15 she ran. Now, I know she's eased down a bit and she flicks her ears, and there might have been a bit more in the tank. Christophe Soumillon certainly thought there was, but that's still slower than par. Every other runner in the race ran a very slow final furlong. None of them able to cope with that good, strong, even gallop that really did eke out the winner's stamina, and she's just stayed on too strongly for her rivals. Obviously, the Guineas will be no problem for her whatsoever. I think, judged on this performance, she would get further than this next season, and if it wasn't for Diamond Necklace, she'd be a very short price favourite for the 1,000 guineas. Look at those first 2 furlongs. They went quite hard to establish a position. She's in 10th spot through the 2nd furlong. Venetian Lace is in front. So Precise has really outstayed her well from the back of the field. And then look at those par furlongs, 11.21, 11.24, 11.19, all pretty similar. Soumillon carving out even fractions, 11.27, 11.59. He's in front there, doing that 11.59, and a 13.15 was slow, but not slow enough to let anything get anywhere near Precise, who's been likened to Minding by her trainer, Aidan O'Brien, and Christophe Soumillon was effusive in his praise for her after this. Of those in behind, I've mentioned Venetian Lace doing well, having been prominent throughout. Legacy Link ran on reasonably well in the closing stages too. Lightly raced horse, finished 4th. The data suggests she ran on okay, but she was still slower than the winner through the final couple of furlongs. So you might well be looking at the 1,000 guineas winner there in Precise. It may just be that she'll just have to beat her stable companion, Diamond Necklace. All right, let's turn our attentions now to Saturday at Newmarket on the Roley Mile. Here are the winners and times. It was an excellent day's racing. We could have put all of these races into the programme. We've just chosen a select few, however. Demisius taking the first, going under standard. Pierre Bonnard took the 150, which was the Night of Thunder Zetland Stakes. 2.53 above, not a great time. Hankelo likewise was well above the Racing Post standard in taking the 225. We'll have a look at him. Gawan in the Dewhurst, of course we'll look at that. Above standard as well a little bit. Cesarewicz, really good ride, Billy Loughnane for the Ian Williams team on a horse who's bred to be a sprinter. It's 1 over 2.25 miles and going half a second under standard. Dubai Treasure, very impressive in the last as well, over 6 furlongs. That was under standard too. So we had good to firm ground, according to the Race IQ Time Index, on the first day of this meeting. The second day, they change it to good to firm and call it good to firm, good in places. I do think it was good to firm still. I think you could legitimately call it good to firm, although the average was a bit lower at 5.7, but we had some steadily run races that brought that average down, and that includes 2 that we're going to have a look at, the second and the third race. And we'll start with the second, which is the Zetland. 4.5 Race IQ Time Index. It's won by Pierre Bonnard, who came for stall number 4, who got the better of endorsement this side from 8. So it's a 1-2 for Aidan O'Brien, and Del Maro was back in 3rd spot. So it's a straight 1.25 miles for 2-year-olds at Newmarket. Quite starey for them, isn't it? Looking all the way down that big, long, sweeping home straight. They went no gallop, though. There was no pace on at all in the early part of this contest, as Mr. Colonel took them along in the early part of the race and went very steadily through the first 6 furlongs. And essentially, this has turned into a bit of a test of speed. You'd have thought 10 furlongs, this quality of racer Group 3, they'd have gone a good gallop, a good test of stamina, and we might have seen a horse that might be a Ledger horse or a Derby horse going forward. I still think we might have seen a Derby horse, but it hasn't transpired how you might have thought it would have done, because those first 6 furlongs are all in the blue. They're all very steady. I'll give you Mr. Colonel split. 2nd furlong, 12.48. 3rd, 12.44. 4th, 12.43. 5th, 12.47. 6th, 12.24. Do get on with it, and does eventually when he gets to the 7th furlong. Gone from a 12.24, suddenly they've picked at the 7th furlong, being from the 4 to the 3, they suddenly picked up. So they've been going slower than 12 seconds. Suddenly they go around about 11.5 seconds, and it turns into a little bit of a dash, a 4 furlong dash for home. And this is where Soumillon begins to make his move towards the stand side. Here's 8th furlong, he's motoring, 11.2 seconds, rated as very fast. And he backs it up with 2 more very fast furlongs to finish the race. Evidence just with your eye, forget the data, that they've gone steady. Look how many horses are in contention, 2 to 1. Loads them in with a chance. It's who can quicken best at this stage, and it is Pierre Bonnard. That 11.20, followed by 11.23, that got him to the front, and a 12.22, the fastest furlong in the race, to finish off with 3 very fast furlongs as against the Race IQ par, and he's done it in good fashion. 107.89 his finishing speed percentage. That tells you a lot about the race, with the par being 101.51. He's over 6% quicker than the par because they've crawled, saved energy and sprinted. They turned the taps on with 4 to run. The real sprint began with 3 to go, and Pierre Bonnard won that sprint. The frightening thing about him is he's by Camelot out of a new approach mare. He probably is going to be a 1.5 mile horse next year, but he can cope with a falsely run race that turns into a test of speed. But he's a horse who's bred to go 1.5 miles next season. That makes him a potential Derby prospect in my eyes. The data tells you how it was run. Look at the Sea of Blue early on, and if you look at the numbers, they're all well over 12 seconds these horses are going. They're dawdling along, perhaps wary that the 2-year-olds are going 1.25 miles, but then they turn it into a real dash. He flies home. Del Moro does as well. Look, he does 3 very fast furlongs against par, but not as fast as Pierre Bonnard. A horse with a staying pedigree who's got a sharp turn of foot, and that next season will be a potent weapon when he takes in a Derby trial and then possibly the Derby thereafter. And you could argue that given how the race was run and given that he was dropped out by Soumillon, after all he raced in 6th spot, that he was positionally disadvantaged, and his speed got him out of trouble, and he quickened up really well. By all accounts, he's a really good-looking individual. People were wowed by him in the paddock. Well, never mind what he looked like in the paddock. That's dark art stuff. We know how fast he can run. That's what matters. And he can run very fast, and he promises to stay 1.5 miles. Tempted to have a little bit on for the Derby. So the Zetland Stakes was slowly run and turned into a sprint, and Pierre Bonnard way too fast for his rivals. And we've got something very similar when we look at the Emirates Autumn Stakes. It's a Group 3 contest, won by Frankel, you'll remember. This is quite steady early on. Frankel from stall 1 beats Elzinati from 3, Glaciers from stall number 7 was 3rd. That's an interesting shot, that first one. It tells you 2 things. 1, Hankelo's got out and got an easy lead, and 2, Elzinati's pulling way too hard. He was very free and keen. He had been when he'd won on his debut, and got away with it in lesser company to win on his debut. He's way too free, off a steady gallop, and that he finishes 2nd is a credit to his raw ability, I think, and he'd be an interesting horse next season if he learns to settle. But you know, you've got to settle and you've got to do things right, and Hankelo did. And Clifford Lee said when interviewed afterwards, he said he hadn't planned to go on, but if nothing wanted to go on and nothing took him on, he'd let his horse roll along. And he let him roll along. This is rather like the Zetland Stakes, in steady fractions early on. Second furlong was 12.04. That's a blue fraction. 11.99 after that. Then a very slow 12.23. So through the fourth furlong, he's able to dab on the brakes a bit and fill his horse up and store up a bit of energy for the finish. Then he goes 12 seconds after that, and he does not get to a sub 12 second furlong until the 3 furlong pole, and he goes 11.3, rated as fast as against the race IQ par. So he's sprinting from the front. Then he's got 11.11. Horses have given him a length or 2 lengths advantage, and then they're going to try and run him down while he's running very fast. Difficult thing to do. 11.26 through the 8th furlong. Brought him home in a fast final furlong. And the trouble is, they've all sat in behind. They've ceded him a positional advantage off steady fractions, and he's able to sprint to the line through the final 3 furlongs. And horses that are sprinting in front of you are hard to catch. You can catch them if they are stopping. Left-hand side of your screen. This is a monster, this horse, New Zealand. He's huge. He's got a massive stride for a 2-year-old. His maximum stride length was 8.23 metres when he won at the Curragh. On the day that he won, he had the biggest stride there as well. And he wants a trip, and he's a stayer in the making. A really good stayer, I put it to you. And he's not beaten all that far in a race that just wasn't run to suit him. He doesn't want a test of speed. He's got a mass raking stride, and he's going to be a 1.5 mile, 1.75 mile horse next season. He might take in a Derby trial. I'd see him down the line as a ledger horse. I think he might be a horse who wants a long trip, and maybe even a 2 miles eventually. But you can see there as he gallops to nearest the camera, he does have a big long stride. Not much knee curl either, so he might always want some decent ground to give of his best. But I'm not giving up on New Zealand. I'm not giving up on Alzanati either, because he pulled really hard. He should have finished last the way he pulled, but he was able to hang on in there and finish second. I think he's probably quite a useful horse, but he's going to have to harness his energy better than he did. Talking of harnessing energy, Clifford Lee, take a bow. And Frankel gets to the front. He's not bothered. He can dictate really steady fractions through the first 5 furlongs, turn it into a sprint. And when a horse is sprinting in front of you, they're very hard to peg back. And try as they might in behind, they've finished quite quickly. Alzanati, Glacius, New Zealand, they still cannot go as quickly as Frankel, who went 11.11. That really sealed the deal in the penultimate furlong. So a bit of a slow, quick race. It was a sprint, but there's plenty of interest in behind the useful winner, another useful winner for Colbert. The feature event on Saturday, of course, was the Darley Dewhurst Stakes, Group 1 for the 2-year-olds over 7 furlongs. It went to the Andrew Balding team, winning with Giwan, beating Gestat into second spot, with Distant Storm for Godolphin back in third. And the winner came from stall 5, Grey Horse, easy to pick out. Gestat from stall number 6, Christophe Soumillon, Distant Storm from stall 7. He was very slowly into stride, Distant Storm. I wonder whether it was on purpose to get him to settle, but 3.25 seconds to 20 miles an hour, whereas the winner was 2.32 seconds to 20 miles an hour, almost a second quicker than Distant Storm. I think that might just have been purposeful from William Buick to get Distant Storm dropped in and settled, because he didn't settle when he ran in the Acomb Stakes behind Giwan. Talking of settling, Gestat, he didn't want to drop his head at all under Christophe Soumillon in the early part of the race. He was way too keen, rather like Alzanati that we've just had a look at. And as per Alzanati, this horse ran on quite strongly in the closing stages despite pulling hard early on. So he can be upgraded. Giwan was here after running poorly in the Champagne Stakes. Maybe it was the ground, maybe something else ailed him that day, because he'd been good when he'd won the Acomb at York. He'd been pretty impressive that day. He'd impressed on debut as well. And here, well, he's come on pretty strongly. But there's not much between the first 4 home here. Look at their penultimate furlongs. Giwan 11.11, Gestat 11.1, Distant Storm 11.07, trying to surge from the back of the field, and Zavatiri 11.1. So, there's not a lot between the first 4. So maybe track position had a bit to do with this result. Certainly it was a good ride from James Doyle, always prominent on Giwan, and then getting him across to the stand side. But overall, with the finishing speed percentage of 102.18, 2.18 above par, you'd have to say this is a good performance from Giwan. they went pretty evenly through the race. They steadied through furlongs 3 and 4, then went again. So it's pretty much an even gallop, and he's able to quicken up really well. Rivals in behind quickened as well, but they couldn't get to him, and he showed a really willing and tough attitude late on. Gstaad had to switch a couple of times, use that as a bit of an excuse. I prefer to say that he pulled too hard, used up a bit too much energy early on. If we look at the data, look at their fastest furlongs, and we're looking at the first 4 home here. There's nothing between them. 11.11 Gowan, 11.1 Gstaad, 11.07 Distant Storm, and 11.1 Zavatiri, all in the penultimate furlong. So they were quickening up from there. So there's not much difference between them, and there's not much in the finishing speed percentages either. So small margins made a difference in the Dewhurst Stakes. Gstaad pulling too hard, perhaps Distant Storm too far back. Gowan well placed and able to quicken up from his position. But this isn't a Zetland or an Autumn Stakes that was steadily run and turned into a dash. This was much more evenly run, as evidenced by the finishing speed percentage. And it would be wrong overall to underestimate Gowan. After all, he's unbeaten bar the Champagne Stakes when things didn't go for him that day, whatever those reasons were. And he'll head now, rather like Caldine did for Andrew Balding, through the Dewhurst to the 2,000 guineas. And, you know, he'd have a chance in that, for sure. This is a good time figure that he's produced here. He's quickened up really well. Look at his attitude. Head bowed low in honesty, giving everything. Gstaad, if you're a Gstaad fan, I wouldn't put you off him either. He pulled too hard. He'd be okay back in trip, but surely they'll try and win a guineas with him. And Distant Storm, likewise in third, perhaps exaggerated waiting tactics to get him settled. And perhaps that mitigated against him a little bit. Quick word about Zavatiri. He ran pretty well, really, in fourth. You can see from his 11.1 penultimate furlong that he did quicken up very well, but he got a bit lost in the dip. Didn't really seem to suit him. He didn't handle it particularly well. And I think he's run really well in fourth place. I don't think Connection should be disappointed with him at all. And they'll probably take in a guineas somewhere, Irish guineas, French, or possibly they'll come back to Newmarket. But the fact that he didn't handle the dip there might mean that they'll stay away from the Rolling Mile. Gowan won't. He'll be back for the 2,000 guineas. Time now on the verdict for the Whirlpool Race of the Week, which was the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup, a Grade 1 at Keeneland on Saturday night over the 9-furlong trip. It was won by a 10 sovereigns filly, Lush Lips, who beat to Laurelin into second place. Third home was Opulent Restraint. The first two coming from stalls 1 and 2. Lush Lips, formerly trained by Donica O'Brien in Ireland. She only ran 3 times for Donica, didn't manage to win. It's gone to Brendan Walsh. Won a claimer at Gulfstream Park, has been in Group Race company ever since then, and now is Bag Day Group 1, running on really strongly under Tyler Gafflioni in the closing stages here. She is lightly raced, and there could be a fair bit more to come from her. And she's with a trainer who is having a fantastic time of it at Keeneland at the moment. He can do little wrong, and she is now a Group 1 winner. That, on Saturday night, was the Whirlpool Race of the Week. Well, I hope you enjoyed looking back at those races, primarily from Dubai Future Champions Weekend. I think we did see some future champions there, whether they were winners or some of the vanquished as well. What we did prove, according to the Race IQ data, is that the figures never lie. See you next week.
The Verdict with Whirlpool. Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.